Hi, this is Summer Todd. Welcome to my show, Summer Todd's Mystery Show. And tonight we'll be discussing synchronicities. I have had a lot of those around my husband's death. So that's our topic tonight. And if you're watching, feel free to chime in and chat. And we welcome that. So I'm going to start off with just some of the numbers and things that happened, and also feel free to chime in because my memory's not always as good as yours, but because you were there too. But so my husband got sick, and he went into the hospital and really didn't know what was wrong with him, and they're kind of going back and forth with tests and sent him home, but he didn't get any better. So things progressed. It was like at the end of May, and they progressed into June, and it was our anniversary, and he was in a hospital, and he wasn't doing well. But they still didn't know exactly what was going on. They had found some cancer here and there, but they thought it was just something minor, which I don't know how cancer's ever minor, but they were acting like it wasn't a big deal. But he was having basically problems breathing. So the day before, we were married on my birthday, which was June 21st. And so I was at the hospital June 20th. And I was there at the hospital with him, and then I went home because I always had to take care of my dogs and get home and stuff, so I didn't stay. And he called me probably about 1 o'clock that night and said they put him in ICU, which that was our anniversary date then. So that was kind of strange. And so I went down to the hospital, had him in ICU, and that morning the respiratory therapist came in, and he had some x-rays, and he just walked right over to both of us and said that he'd never seen anything like it. My husband was basically, his lungs were just like full of cancer. And he said, chemo's off the table. I mean, there's just nothing we can do. So this is like our anniversary and my birthday. And I'm like, this is so weird, like our 38th anniversary. Yeah. So I'm like, this is crazy. This doesn't even be happening. So so that synchronicity with the date was really kind of strange. Another thing that kind of was strange that day is my daughter was moving into her first home, and Austin and Austin's fiance was at work. Oh, did you? I see you now. Do you see me now?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. So Austin was at work. My son was at work, and his fiance went with my daughter and her husband to help them move. And so everybody was kind of together, which was not a usual thing. Right, Austin? That's not a usual thing.
No, not typically, because we're all kind of scattered out. So yeah, I mean, especially on that day of all days for us to be together was kind of coincidental, considering we hadn't heard the news. Me and Tell hadn't heard the news, and my wife and my fiance hadn't heard the news yet.
Yeah, nobody had heard the news, and I knew that, like, my daughter and her husband and Austin's fiance were all together, and Austin was at work. So anyway, I went home to kind of process things after my husband and I kind of were in shock, but I went home to process things, feed my dogs, and then I went back to the hospital, and I talked to one of the certified public nurses, I think, and she said she would have a family meeting to talk to my family because, it's kind of hard to tell them something like that. So it was really it wasn't a hard thing to do, was to call my daughter, and because they were all together. So that was strange too, because they're never all together. They're all over the place. They're over the map. So I called my daughter. I told her to come to the hospital with everybody. And then I told Austin's fiance to get a hold of him at work. and they knew that his dad had been had some problems, so I knew there weren't going to be any problems there. So they ended up all coming there, and we had a family meeting and discussed, basically how he wasn't going to live very long. And I just thought it was all so strange how it all came together like that. I mean, because Austin knows that, him and his sister aren't like, they weren't real close. They lived, like, she lived in Cincinnati and he lived out, pretty about an hour and a half away. And, they doing their own separate things. So it was strange. It was very strange. So that's a synchronicity there. Yeah. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Roger, or anybody, but.
Before I get into any comments, I wanted to mention that Wicked A in chat said that Austin's sounding a little bit loud, but he sounds fine. So.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I should introduce Austin. Austin Todd is my son, and he does this show with me on and off. Sometimes he does it without me if I can't make it. And tonight we're doing it together. So that's who this is. It's Austin Todd.
Nice to meet you. For those of you who haven't met me yet.
Oh, they got a chance to meet you. Trust me.
Yeah.
We had a really good episode last week, so they met you.
Yeah. That was good. Yeah, I don't know what your comments are. What you think about that, Roger, or if you've had anything like that happen. But that was kind of
synchronicity for me. Like what you're saying there, it fits, and it's like I've never. The one thing that always sticks out with me on synchronicities is like you don't really have any control over it. You know what I mean? For me personally,
right? Yeah.
And when this stuff happens, it's kind of like freaking, it just falls into place. You know what I mean? And
right.
I've said it before on a couple of your previous episodes where I personally don't think like it's paranormal. I think it's supernatural, which there is a difference between paranormal and supernatural.
You know? I'm glad you said that, because I've always thought that too, and I thought that was kind of just me that thought that. But.
Yeah. And
yeah, I just don't know how, like, okay, you talk about 38 years ago. I mean, you're getting married on my birthday. It's probably one of the happiest, supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life. It was a happy day at that time. So then who would think 38 years later, you're going to be sitting in a hospital with a doctor saying, your husband's dying. So it's so weird. It's just so weird. What's the likelihood of that? It's just kind of, yeah.
One done. It's one in a billion.
Right.
I just had a quick question for Roger, real quick. How do you differentiate between the paranormal and the supernatural? I was just wondering if it was kind of the same way I do.
Supernatural it's an ability, okay? It's something that isn't explainable. It's a phenomena, but it's an ability that I believe every human being is capable of freaking doing, okay? It's above natural. It's nothing that's like natural things that you do as a human being naturally, but it's beyond that. It's above that, you know what I mean? Like, everybody talks about psychic abilities and they always clump it up with supernatural, or not super, but paranormal, and I don't believe that. I believe that it's natural. Like, we have abilities within our brain, within our body, that makes us all capable of doing these things. It's just some people are able to do it better. I believe some people are born and capable of doing it better, but I also think that you can also learn how to do it. I don't think that there's anything stopping anybody from doing just that, and that's supernatural for me. Paranormal is like ghosts, things of that
Right.
nature, you know.
Yeah.
Know people or something like that, maybe.
You know.
So, but I mean, how do you think that people do it? Because I mean, it just happens, right? I mean,
Well, there's
That-
just some things that are unexplainable at the moment, you know what I mean? Maybe later on, 50, 100 years from now, you know, these awesome
Mhm.
scientists that they are will be able to figure it out, you know, hey, this is how the brain works.
and sometimes I think that's why people believe in reincarnations, because these weird dates. And this is really strange, and it was something I never put together. When one of the best bosses I've ever had outside, there was two, but he's one of the best. When he retired, it was June 30th, 2016. So anyway, this is weird. Well, we ended up, like, he retired, and then my husband died, and then we ended up, we still kept in touch and went out to lunch occasionally. So, but anyway, now we are seeing each other. So this was funny. We were talking about it one day, about my husband, and he's like, "What day did he die?" He said, "What day was that?" Because he came to the funeral. I said, "Well, it was June 30th." And he was like, "Oh, so it was June 30th, 2017. And I was like, "Oh my God, you retired June 30th, 2016. So that was really, something I hadn't put together. It was really strange. He was like, "That's pretty weird." I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Did you know that? I think I told you that finally, but yeah, I didn't even know it. Yeah. So that was another weird date. And then I was talking to my daughter, I think Austin knows this. She found out she was pregnant with her first baby on Black Friday. So then this year, I mean, they weren't planning on having another baby for a while. They didn't even know if they were going to. Then she texted me and she said, "Oh my God, I haven't been feeling well. And it's Black Friday, and I took a pregnancy test, and I found I was pregnant the same day as my other baby." So she's pregnant now again, as Denver, the baby, my grandson. So I was like, that's kind of weird.
And see, it's like with that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, what if, and I'm not saying it's true or not, but what if there was something in her brain that made it capable to where she had the baby on the same day? Okay.
Or she took the pregnancy test. She didn't have the baby on the same, but the pregnancy test.
Well,
Yeah.
the pregnancy test, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? On the
Found
same exact day.
Positive on both days. Yeah.
you
A
know?
year
That's
apart.
very possible.
But I don't see how I could have any influence, like, on when my boss's last day was, or when Marty's last day on Earth was. Because I mean, basically, sent him home to die, and it ended up being about a week after that, and it was June the 30th. Yeah.
Well, that goes into something deeper. Vince and Bob Dub talks about it all the time. It's a matter of what you believe in when it comes to determination. Do you think the world is about all free will, or is it about determination, and how determinism is actually the best, the way they say determinism? Like, do you think everything's determined? And if you do, on what level? I mean, do you think it's hard determination or soft, which is where it's a little bit, or hard is where you think everything is already predetermined?
I don't think it's predetermined. I think we're tested here. But this is interesting that we're talking about this, because my boyfriend has a book now, and if I'm going to let Austin read it after I read it. It's called Fluke, and it talks about when they dropped the atomic bomb. This one guy had taken a vacation. I think it was 20 years earlier or something, and he told them not to bomb the island that he took the vacation on. Do you know who that was, Austin? He just kind of told me real quickly the other day when he read a little piece of it. He was like, was
it a Japanese guy? Or
no, he was I think he was a professor or something. He had something to do with it. And he told them, he told them, don't drop the bomb on this island because it's so beautiful. My wife and I have visited there. We went on vacation there many years ago. So they said, if you look at that, this guy's vacation determined how all these people that didn't get killed. And then there was also that the cloud cover issue.
When the Enola Gay was flying in, they were gonna hit a different city. They had to divert. They chose to divert to Hiroshima because of cloud cover.
Right. Right.
And then
go on.
And then of course, if we either hadn't dropped it or had dropped it even maybe a week later, the Russians probably would have been able to eventually invade Japan and get in on the post-war deal like they had in Europe. So that changed the timing of us dropping it and everything, drastically shifted the course of history.
But it's all these little things. I think we're interconnected. If you look at it, we're all interconnected. And the beginning of the book starts out about this guy whose granddad, was it his granddad? Anyway, yeah, I think so. Or his dad. I can't remember. His wife killed off the whole family. So he was telling his son, he said, if it hadn't been for her doing that, you wouldn't be here today. Because he got remarried and had a new son. He had a son and a daughter too, I think. But he was like, if it hadn't been for her, going crazy and killing my whole family basically and herself, then you guys wouldn't be here today.
One of the things too, with regards to that book, I was wanting to.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. One of the things with regards to that book too, I was talking to you about that the other day when I was telling you about that show on the Fifth Dimension John was wanting to do. So
Yeah.
that was kind of some of the stuff I was gonna touch on. Whenever we were able to do that show. I mean, obviously right now his shows are on hold, but that was one of the things I wanted to talk about.
Let's kind of touch on that now. Then sounds like a plan.
Interdimensional stuff.
Everything you wanted to touch on, man, bring it up.
Oh, okay. I thought you want us to stick to synchronicities, but I can touch on it real quick if you're okay with that.
if it's all right with your mom,
That's fine. Yeah, anything.
I mean, it's her show.
Because it kind of ties into it. Yeah, and actually, before you start, like Gerald and I, that's my boyfriend. We were talking about, is it all predetermined or is there free will? But we kind of think it's all. It has to be, doesn't it? I think that you're tested here on Earth, but that's what's kind of our feeling. So yeah.
I think on that aspect though, like everybody wants it to be totally 100% free will, okay? But
it could be.
There's a issue with it though. It's like it's relationships, like with me, you, and Austin, and us communicating together. Okay, Austin wants free will, you want free will, and so do I. But our outlooks and our opinions are different, and sometimes they collide. You know what I mean? So we affect one another on a personal level like that when we're communicating. It's not just like being spiritually connected and stuff like that, but on a physical level, we affect one another. Okay.
We kind of impose on each other in a way, if you will.
Right. So in reality, there's really no such thing as 100% free will. You know what I mean? And so I kind of...
something that influences it, but is it completely like
I think it's. I personally
decision. Like maybe you have it set in your head that you're going to go and do something, but then all of a sudden you just change your mind. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I personally think it's a bit of both. There are some things that are predetermined, and there's some things that are free will, because there's a lot of things that have happened in all of our lives that we never would have chosen to have happen, but some things were just out of our hands, and then other things were totally in our control. So,
Yeah.
I mean, based on my personal experience, I think a bit of both are the case. It's neither one nor the other entirely.
Like, I look at the Kennedy assassination, kind of look at that where there was Jean Dixon was the psychic, and I think Kennedy actually did trust her, and she tried to get a hold of him that day to tell him not to go to Dallas. So, not to, and if he did, to be very, very careful. Well, he wasn't answering his calls. I guess he was too busy or something. But she was saying that she could have prevented him from dying, but not his brother, wasn't it that way, Austin? She said some things you can prevent and some things you can't. So she said his brother she couldn't have saved, but she could have saved him. If she could have gotten to him, it could have been averted. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's both. But she's a psychic, so maybe she knew, but yeah.
John Kennedy shouldn't have been screwing around with all those mob bosses, the CIA and stuff like he was doing. That was his undoing.
If he was careful, there is a possibility that
and then he had the nerve to ride around in an open motorcade while he was screwing around with some really dangerous people.
Lincoln was the same way, and he even had a dream. President Lincoln had that premonition of his death. Who's died in the White House? Did you ever hear that, Roger?
About Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard so much about Abraham Lincoln.
Austin's done a lot of research on him. We just read a lot about him, and he did have a dream where he was in the East room, Austin, and he was in like a bed. Was it a bed or a coffin? I can't remember.
He had a dream. He was laid out in state. That there was a coffin laid out in state at the Capitol building. He walked up and asked somebody in the crowd that was standing around the coffin who it was that was laid out in state, and they said it's the president. That's President Lincoln. He's just been assassinated.
And he told his wife Mary, and of course she was kind of crazy because she'd lost all of her sons except for Robert Todd. And she was very uncomfortable about it. And then it was a premonition dream.
Now, see,
but just,
providence. A lot of people mix up the definition for providence, but there's two definitions that goes to it. All right. Now, the act of providence is knowing something before it happens. Okay. Now, everybody uses the term providence as like a higher power or a God, stuff like that. But there's two definitions. So, like with me and synchronicity, you go through life and you notice all these things that are like a domino effect. Okay. Like, you know that A equals B equals C and then onward.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got all this stuff adding up in your brain, and then you go to bed and you have dreams. Now, Carl Jung was a guy who believed in dream interpretation, and what he did is he said that all these figures that you have in your dream represent something. Okay.
They do.
And
like represent your how you feel about yourself. Your upper rooms are supposed to be what? Your brain, and the others is like your physical state of being or something. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Well, it's kind of like with synchronicity too. You've got all these things that you're noticing subconsciously, and it's telling you in your brain, look, man, this is going to happen. So guess what happens? You start having dreams about it. You know what I mean? It's like, don't get me wrong, it could be paranormal, but this stuff could also be supernatural. It could be something that happened, you know what I mean? A premonition could possibly be freaking a part of synchronicity as well. Like, I mean, you're having
Yeah.
visions of what's happening in the future because you can see these events coming out in front of you. You know?
And that kind of ties in too with what I was going to say about the interdimensional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say, for example, this reality, the physical world we live in, we all know that everything's made up of chains of atoms called molecules. And then, you know, you got atoms just in and of themselves, which by themselves they could represent a separate dimension that's intertwined with yet parallel to this one. And then those in turn are made up of subatomic particles like quarks and electrons and protons and neutrons, which in and of themselves could make up a still different reality, parallel yet intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got subquantum particles, which that's what makes up the subatomic particles, which again make up a different reality, parallel yet intertwined. And then of course, you know, so on and so forth into infinity, because you can keep breaking down particles into smaller and smaller bits of matter, you know, on and on. In a scientific manner of speaking, that's the best way of explaining it to people, how different dimensions could be intertwined.
Right.
So, and some of those things I'm talking about, that could be what makes up our mental and emotional energy that shapes physical reality, because physical reality is the result of what goes on with the mind and the emotional state. That's really important in law of attraction and visualization.
Well, that's
so there could be all.
Go on. Sorry. Go ahead.
So there could be all these dimensions where things are going the way they would have been had things turned out differently in this dimension, and different versions of ourselves in those other dimensions could be wondering how things would have went had the things that happened in this dimension that we're in now not happened. And then that kind of ties into something I don't know if I'm sure Roger's heard of it. He's heard of damn near everything.
You're pretty much you're spelling out alternate dimensions. That's straight up science. Like,
yeah.
You're hitting on some seriously good stuff there, because that's a lot of things that freaking people don't want to believe is actually explained in science. It might be theory, but it's still they have a math equation. You see what I mean? That says this is possible.
It's like,
well, you know,
it's like something
to what I wonder though about, you know, how could that be predetermined with what happened? I don't know if it's really about the dimensional thing, but maybe it was a premonition because about getting married on my birthday. Maybe I knew that was going to happen in the back of my mind somehow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you know how could you make that happen? And remember what we were talking about?
No, I got questions.
You know, you're so mind.
I got questions for you.
Hello, Alan.
You're in trouble. You're in trouble. Stone But Not Alone said, "What's up, everybody?" And Wicked Egg came back with another question because he's apparently listening to us.
Yeah.
So this is good. All right. He's listening. So let me give you a question. He says, so do you think synchronicity is a result of unintended human subconscious influence or in our life, or divine interdimensional influence? So that goes back.
Probably.
Well, I'm thinking. That's why I'm not sure. I'm thinking. I said, you know what, Roger?
I would say probably a bit of both.
Bit of both, but I said, you know, when I asked him that question, how could that I predict that happening? I mean, how could I make that happen? But maybe we knew, both of us in some way, that date was important, not just as it being my birthday, you know, that it was going to be a date that was important or something, or going to happen. I don't know. You know, and there was no way, I don't think, that he could have lived. So that was kind of, I think sometimes your death is predetermined, isn't it? I don't know. How could his death? I mean, he didn't die on that day, but it's still pretty odd. Yeah, that's a lot to think about.
And that whole story gets even weirder too, as
how with the
the day Dad passed away, or that night, I came over. I was staying at me and my fiance were staying at your house that night,
mm-hmm.
and my cousin texted me to tell him to say how sorry he was to hear about Dad's passing, and now they loved us and was thinking about us and stuff. And that was the last time I ever spoke to him.
Oh, so that was on June the 30th too.
Yes, that was the last time I ever spoke to him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that's where it gets even weirder.
Yep.
Yeah, because he passed away a couple of weeks after that, right? On the what?
Actually, it was exactly 2 weeks to the day.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, 14th then. Okay. It's weird. Just weird. Yeah.
I think she's getting chills down her back. You done
But
got
yeah,
her.
you think about it in many different ways. I don't know.
And also, my Dad's younger brother, my Uncle Doug, he passed away 4 days before my dad did. So my dad was on his deathbed. He was in the in-home hospice. And my Aunt Jeannie, I think, called you. Did she, Mom? Or did she call Tell?
Yeah, his sister, his
crying. And we thought it was about Dad.
Yeah, because she wanted to talk to Marty, and I told her, I said, and we weren't real close to his family in Kentucky, but I wasn't mean to her or anything. I just told her, I said, and they had been trying to reach Marty, and I told her, I said, I haven't been able to call you because there's been so much going on, but he passed away. Yeah, and then she was
it turned out she was crying because she had found my Uncle Doug dead that morning, and he had died in his sleep. And then his funeral was on the day that my dad passed away, and it was probably the visitation and the graveside service. I think they did one.
Right.
Was concluding around the time my dad actually passed.
Yeah. She called me a couple of days before I think, how did she do that? Yeah, she called me a couple of days before my husband, before your dad passed, and said,
yeah, because he had just passed away and they were planning his funeral.
And he was passed away. Yeah, but then she called me on the Friday crying, and she said the funeral would be on Friday. Yeah. And then I told her, she didn't know Marty was as sick as he was, and I told her, and so she was upset. But then it turned out that Doug's funeral was the same day as your dad's passing, about the same time, actually. Yeah, that was weird. Very weird.
So,
yeah, because his funeral would have been around 2:00, and that's when Marty passed away. And his half sister, when she called me a couple days before that, she didn't know Marty was that sick, and I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I just haven't called you. I said, it's just been a lot. We thought he was going to get better. And she's like, oh no, he can't be that sick because Doug just passed away. And I was like, I'm sorry. I said, I don't know how long it's going to be. And so then here it is Friday, and she's calling me, and I'm like, what the world is she calling me for? Like, he just passed. Did she find out or something? Because I was the only one to keep in touch with her. And she got a hold of me, and she was crying, yeah, so it's weird. The whole thing was weird. It was just strange.
So I mean, you're telling me the story and everything, but like, what is your take on it? I mean, what's your take on it? You know what I mean?
I kind of believe in reincarnation because of it, because I think because Marty and his brothers weren't real close because there were a lot of family issues and stuff. And not that my husband didn't want to be close with them, but he just wasn't. And I just feel like they must, they went on and to another place together. They were supposed to be there, they were together in this life for some reason, and they're going on. That's why I kind of believe in reincarnation. I think there's lessons, and we meet people again and again, because you've met people where you always feel like you know them or you've known them.
Yeah.
Just a stranger. Right? Yeah. Oh, and this was weird too. See, this is why I believe that, because when I worked at Miami, I was going to quit, and then I went for this interview, and this lady, her name was Juanita Tate, and she hired me, and she was just the sweetest lady. I mean, she was just sweet. And so she was she actually was still working with me when my husband was sick. Or no, wait, she had retired. So anyway, my husband's out. We're out in the middle of a cornfield someplace, and this hospice nurse comes. And there were several hospice nurses, but this was one was very special. She took a lot of care of Marty. She took him and shaved him, made sure he had everything he needed, and she was just right. She was just perfect. And so she comes in, and we're talking, and she's like, "Where do you work?" And I said, "Miami University." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, do you know Juanita Tate?" And I was like, Juanita Tate? I said, "You've got to be kidding me." I said, "Because she's the woman that hired me into the department I'm in right now." I said, and she's like, "You're kidding." She said, "We grew up together." And, Juanita had retired, I think, and moved to Atlanta by that time. But I was like, what's the likelihood of that? And she was like, "That's so strange." And actually, that nurse was there the day Marty passed away. And she's the one that signed off on all the papers and stuff. I think you met her, Austin, didn't you? I forget her name now, but it was so strange.
I can't remember it either.
But you know who I'm talking about. She was there when you and
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
yeah, she was there the day I came over after he had just passed. Yep.
And I was like, what in the world? She said, "That's very unlikely." And I was like, yeah, very unlikely. So I didn't understand, some of that stuff. That's why I kind of believe maybe in reincarnation or something. It's like we've all been together another time. Yeah.
And it's like, with me, it's like all that is real touchy, because, I mean, if you're open-minded enough to it, you can actually see where there could be supernatural things going on there rather than it being paranormal. But at the same time, there's a little bit of paranormal in there too. Like, there's no explanation for both brothers dying within a week of one another, you know what I mean? But
well, yeah, within 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. It was so. I was like, this is.
And then Doug's funeral being the same day that my dad passed. I just can't get over how surreal that all is. I even to this day, it's been almost 7 years ago, I think, and I still can't get over how surreal that is. That's like this. You just can't make that up,
One thing that stuck out to me is you said that they really didn't communicate and everything. So, what possessed his family into picking up the phone and calling you?
Well, I think that was the problem. He called. Margie was his half sister's name. She called me, I think, on a Wednesday. Yeah, she must have called me to tell me Doug died that Wednesday. But she wanted to talk to Marty, and I told her that he was very, very sick, and she was kind of crying and stuff. And anyway, that's what it was. That's why she called me. She said, "Well, I always wanted to tell him when the funeral was going to be and everything." That was it. And so I said, okay. And she said, I think it's going to be Friday around 2:00. So, and then she did. I think she called me the next day and confirmed that. So I didn't think, and I was so busy with Marty. I was like, and I told her, I said, well, I'm sorry. He can't talk because he was on morphine. And she's like, he can't be that sick. And I was like, I'm sorry, he really is. So anyway, I didn't know her real well. And she was upset and crying. And so I didn't think anything of it, because nobody was going to make it to the funeral from our end because Marty was so sick. And then here, Marty passed away. And I think I ended up calling her later that night, and she was upset, but she couldn't believe it because it was so strange. Yeah, because she was like, yeah, this is about time of Doug's funeral. But yeah. So,
You know what this reminds me of?
No.
Remember John Adams and Thomas Jefferson? I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
I think John Adams was on his, or Thomas Jefferson was on his deathbed, and it was like July 4th, 1814, I think.
Yeah.
Or around, and he was like, well, at least, I'm about to pass on, but at least my friend John Adams will still be around a little while to be involved with things and keep the country moving in the right direction. But little did he know, his friend John Adams was also on his deathbed that day, and they both died on July 4th.
They were falling out for a little bit, and then they were friends again, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a stormy. I think they had a stormy relationship, but they both wound up dying on July 4th of all days, and they were founding fathers which what are the odds of that? It's just too much to be coincidence.
Independence Day too.
With
Yeah. So that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see it with friends. And also, it was kind of weird. After my husband passed, I kind of got on Facebook in a couple groups with widows. And the weirdest thing is I've seen, it wasn't just in our family, but a lot of families where the woman would lose a husband and she'd lose a son or their brother. It would be like usually quite a few, maybe 3 to 4 family members within a year or 6 months. So it's some kind of thing that seems to happen quite often. Because with us, we were just clipping along. We weren't real close. You weren't close with your uncle, and I wasn't close to him, but Marty's brother. But, Sam, come on, he was 32? He was only 30 or 34. I don't know how old he was. Very young. So.
Too, his cousin, my cousin Sam's cousin, I think on his mom's side of the family, I don't know who that would have been to me, but he had died earlier in March.
Oh, I remember that. So there was
same year.
Yeah. He died. Then Marty got sick, and then Doug, and then Sam. So we have 4 family members. Some of them not as close to us as Sam and Marty, of course, but yeah. And it's really hard when you go to a funeral, like your dad, how that awful that was, and then we have to turn around. We're just getting our bearings. We're just trying to get stuff like back together, and we have to turn around and go to another funeral. That's terrible.
Yeah.
It's like
What happened with my wife's family just last year. You remember that whole.
I think that's why sometimes I think we're all connected somehow, like, from another time or dimension or something. I don't know. It's something to think about. But yeah.
I forgot which movie it was. I know it was a cheesy love story, but there was this one thing where this guy he used to go around reading the newspapers to figure out who had passed away so he could go to their auctions and buy their stuff. And
Yeah.
he would do it every morning. He'd get up and read the obituaries and stuff. And he had a conversation with a relative. It was a girl, I think it was. And they started getting into the conversation, he said you would be amazed by these obituaries if you just sit and read them, because freaking he was trying to get at how there was a lot of things that are in common, you know what I mean? And like when it comes to death in a family, the whole family focuses on that death, but like there's a lot of similarities with not just family members but like everybody, you know what I mean? Like that's something that always stuck out to me on that movie. I wish I could remember it. But like I said, it was a cheesy chick flick, and I'm not really into all that cool stuff.
Well, and then I don't know. There was just what was some other stuff I was going to talk about? Let me see. Now this is kind of paranormal, though. Really, I don't know if it's a synchronicity. You know, people say that when somebody dies, you just kind of look for signs. But I really wasn't trying to look for anything because it was just too much had happened. So, you know, I'm just clipping along. So, I was getting ready to sell this big farmhouse, and my husband had this shop full of tools, and I had no idea what any of them did. You know, kind of specialty items. So I met with an auctioneer to get rid of the stuff in the garage because it was just overwhelming. And I felt really bad that day about it. You know, I just felt bad. And so I went to bed that night, and this is so crazy because I had a Pandora music on my alarm, and it would always wake me up with some stupid commercial before it would play half a song or something, you know. And then it would go to commercial. Well, the next morning, I was feeling kind of bad. The song, now you guys might not know this song because I know Austin does, but you might not, Roger. It was a country song by Wade Hayes, and it was called Go Live Your Life. So I wake up in the morning to this song. It's like, Go Live Your Life. It's Wade Hayes. He's a country music singer. He was just around for a little bit. I don't know what he's doing now. But he got cancer, and he wrote a song, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor cleared him and said, it looks like it's gone for now. And he said, well, all I can tell you is go live your life. So he wrote this song. So here's a song coming on in the morning, and I'm thinking, that must be a sign that I'm doing the right thing. I don't know. And so it was really good. And then I have a lot of music, different music on my thing. So another song, and I always forget the name of it. Oh, so My Life Is in Your Hands by Kirk Franklin it's a gospel song, and I've always liked it, so I had it on my Pandora thing too. And I was getting dressed and thinking about this weird song by Wade Hayes and how it kind of tied in, and I felt kind of good because I felt like it was a sign from him. And then Kirk Franklin starts playing this song, My Life Is in Your Hands. And if you listen to the words, it's talking about how you're going through a lot and you know, that it's just, everything's going to be okay. And it was the weirdest thing because both songs played completely through, and they never do when I would wake up in the morning. You know, there's always commercials and stuff. And it was like those two songs played, and, you know, it gave me a good feeling because I was like, you know, I was kind of bummed out that I was having to do that, but that's all I could do. But so that was always strange to me. You know, I think they give you signs sometimes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't believe it, but I really wasn't looking for it, you know. And I'm not really, wasn't raised religious, so I wasn't real, you know.
I got into a pretty intense conversation here lately, and I got frustrated, and we got in a big argument and that stuff, and a friend of mine stepped in and freaking started talking, and it kind of straightened itself out. And the reason why it actually did straighten itself out was because my friend mentioned control, and that really helped out with me personally, because freaking I've already thought about this whole control thing, and people have control issues, and they don't really understand what control really is. You know, like if you've worked in a warehouse or a factory, I should say, you understand what controls are. Okay, they set up controls all over this factory so that people like me and you don't go and freaking put ourselves in harm's way and touch something that hurts us. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a control. That's the only form of control that there is. You know what I mean? And that's control. Well, like, these controls are warning signs. So when you see a stop sign and you see a yield sign, and especially if you're driving behind a big truck that have all these stop signs and yield signs in the back of it, you need to freaking realize there's a warning right there. You know what I mean? That's something telling you that it's a red flag and you need to watch out. You know what I mean? Cause, people don't realize that, like, these are warning signs. That's where the control is. It's not you trying to control things. You have these controls set up around you, and you have to navigate through life without getting hurt. Now you have the choice if you want to touch the electric wire too and electrocute yourself, even though you've seen the warning. You know, that's your choice. You know,
right?
And that kind of opened me up on a lot of things, and believe it or not, it actually helped with the argument too, because I freaking put my mind right back in the state of frame that it is. You know, I can't control things like I think I can. You know?
No, we have a lot of control sometimes.
So.
Right. I don't know, but anyway, back to those songs. I think that's really odd that the first song was about somebody that had cancer and he almost died, and you know, it's like, go live your life. That's weird.
Right. Exactly.
I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing the right thing, because I felt like that night when I had the auctioneer out there, I was like, you know, I just feel really bad having to sell all this stuff off, because that's like him, you know.
Right.
And am I doing? But there's nothing else I could do. So, well, but I think
that those songs though were what I'm referring to. Those were signs. You see, those were signs.
Right. I think you. Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
You could have listened to it, or you could have just put your hand on the electric. You know?
I don't know.
I mean, how many people freaking see signs and they just ignore it? Like, it's, you know, you picked up on it. That's a good thing. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Before he passed away, I really don't remember having a lot of signs from anyone, you know. So there was some stuff there with him. And I think Austin had some things happen too, didn't he?
For him passing away?
After he passed away, he felt like...
Yeah. At his funeral, again, my cousin Sam couldn't make it, and I had a feeling, and you know, I think it was my dad talking to me that Sam wasn't long for this world at that point. I think that was my dad telling me, you know, he's next, and it was about 10 days later that Sam passed away. And then on the way home from the funeral, me and my fiance got flagged down by some guy hanging out his car yelling at us about something being wrong with my car. So I had to pull over, and it turned out the wheel on my car was loose, getting ready to come off. My dad was always finding things wrong with my car. You know, so I think he kind of came through that guy to point something out that day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So those were two of the first things that happened in the immediate aftermath of his passing.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well, Austin's got kind of a. I mean, I haven't felt him now. Not around a whole lot.
Didn't you have like a list of music? Didn't you have like a list of music?
What for that he?
Like didn't you, when you said that last song, wasn't there, like, do you have any more songs that you wanted to talk about?
No, not really. That is something that happens to me though. Sometimes I'll be thinking of someone and a song will come up that, kind of ties to them. But those two in particular, I think were just kind of,
Oh, okay.
it was
You could mention that one Michael McDonald song.
which, I forgot all about that. That's a little, oh my God, yes, I was going to tell.
That's a whole story in and of itself.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So this is really creepy. Okay, yes, and actually this happened wasn't it just last year? So when my husband and I first started, before we even started seeing each other, I used to work at this fast food restaurant, and he came through and he gave me this yellow rose. So that was always kind of our thing, was a yellow rose. And him and I had talked about, like, if something ever happened to us, that we needed to tell the other one that we went on somewhere. So I said, well, we see the number 1111 a lot, and maybe just something about a yellow rose. So he was like, yeah, that'll work. But we really never went into in depth about it, because it's kind of creepy talking about dying, So I was watching this Michael, because I like to find different songs that are kind of, out there and not mainstream. And a lot of times I'll send them to Austin because he's a musician. And so there was this Michael McDonald song, You Can Let Go Now. And I started listening to it. It's such a pretty song. And it's not really an A song. It's B song, like it's kind of not one of his most popular songs, but I think it's really pretty. So anyway, I was watching this video, and the guy, I guess his wife dies, and he's like in Paris or something, and then all of a sudden it goes to this clip and there's this yellow rose. And I was like, well, that's kind of funny. And then I just happened to look down at the bottom and it said it was 211. And I was like, that's crazy. It's crazy. It can't be. So I go back.
2 minutes and 11 seconds into the video.
Yeah. So, I mean, usually you don't even see that on those videos. So I went back and I did it. And exactly at a 211, this yellow rose is on the screen. Austin saw it. I when Austin came over next time, I said, Austin, you got to see this. This is so weird. And so I just felt like, well, what else can that be? What else can that be? Because I hadn't been thinking of him, like, it's been 5 years. It had been 5 years by then. I was like, he's not on my mind all the time anymore. It's not like when you first lose somebody and you're like shocked, because it was shocking because he wasn't sick and he died within a month. But I'm like, I was just watching this Michael McDonald video. It's so crazy. And when Austin watched it, he kind of freaked out too. And even his sister, because I don't think she's all in with stuff like that. But she's like, man, that's kind of weird, Mom. I was like, yeah. So... yeah, I don't know what that was about, but
to find that video and drop a link to it for everybody in Discord or whatever.
Yeah, I can, because if they watch, there's separate, and that's another thing too. If you go onto YouTube, this. Like if you're looking at musical videos, there's usually 2 or 3 different ones. Well, with this Michael McDonald video, they got one where there's just their guy's pictures on there or something. But this one actually goes through the whole video with the woman and the guy, and then him going to her grave, I think. So that was weird. And it's that particular video that I was watching the first time I saw it. I was like, this is so strange. And I think if it was him, he knew that I would definitely tell Austin, because I was looking for new music to send to Austin, because that's how I ended up coming across this Michael McDonald song. He's not one of my favorites, but Yeah, I mean, I like his music, and I knew Austin liked him, so it was funny, strange funny. Yeah,
See,
I
like with
forgot all.
that, I honestly, being when you think about stuff like that, you can't really say what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I could sit and say that it's this and that, but I mean, that right there makes you have to stop and think. You know, like you're talking about actually having contact with your ex-husband, so you can't just say that that's synchronicity. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah, it was very powerful because I hadn't thought about him in a long time like that strongly. It was like, wow. I mean, I was just sitting there kind of crying because I was like, this is strange. I mean, nobody believed me, and I was hoping, when I went back to the video, I was like, gosh, I was hoping I can see that on there. Of course I can, so I could prove it to my kids. But I was like, very weird,
yeah. I
so.
think that message was directed more towards you than anybody else, though. You know.
Right.
So,
And the song, if you listen to the song, is kind of weird because it's the words are "You can let go now."
yeah.
So the whole song, a very powerful song. Actually, didn't was it David? What's his name? David Pack, who wrote the song with him, wasn't it? Or was it was written for somebody that died?
Well, I mean, that was a different song by them.
Yeah, that was true. Yeah, but I think Michael McDonald wrote the song.
I get them confused though because the Michael McDonald song is "I Can Let Go Now." The song he did with David Pack and Luther Ingram was "I Can't" or "I Just Can't Let Go." Let go. So it's it is easy to confuse the two.
That one's Ingram dying now. Yeah. So this one, I don't know.
It sounds more like a sequel. Like a sequel to the other one.
But music ties into a lot of things, I think, sometimes when you lose somebody or you're going through stuff,
Well, think about that, though. Like, do you think you could be influenced more through music and sleep than you can in your waking days where you're not listening to music or anything like that? Like, that's one thing that a lot of people have a hard time with thinking about. Like, when you're dreaming, okay, do you think a spirit could freaking influence you while you sleep?
Oh yeah. Yes, I do. I'm not good though. Usually, I don't know. But yeah, I guess if you listen to music and stuff, that you could. Yeah.
Like I get a certain feeling when I listen to rock and roll. I'm not big on country and stuff, but like when I listen to rock and roll, it makes me feel a certain way. Well, you know, and that's just music, period. You know what I mean? It makes you feel a certain way, so that's a way of influencing you. You know?
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes perfect sense to me if the spirit's wanting to contact you and they want to find a way of influencing you to where you pay attention. How would you do it? Through your dreams or through music?
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Well, they say they do influence you through electronics and music a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know if you remember, Austin. You probably remember it better than me. That the night you were fooling around, which you shouldn't have been, with Alexa.
Yeah.
We were all here. I think it was Christmas Eve. It might have been the first Christmas Eve your dad had passed. No, it was the second. The second year he was gone. And we were all playing cards. It was Christmas Eve, and there was a couple other people here. And tell them what you did, Austin. It was kind of strange. I said, "Don't do it." But
we had read on some paranormal sites and stuff that Alexa, you could talk to it, and it could play songs by dead loved ones and stuff. So I was like, I told it to play a song that my dad would have liked and that Sam would have liked. And the first song played was like a Lyle Lovett song, which how would you have known that?
yeah,
And then it played a song by Pink Floyd, which Sam would have loved. And I think my wife's son was there. Now, he had a friend pass away not too long before that, and he didn't really believe us, so he told her to play something that his friend has really liked, and it freaked him out too, because it played.
Go on.
I forget what the song was now. I'd have to ask my wife, but it freaked him out too.
But then, do you remember the other song? There was this random song that we were all like, well, what's that about? So my daughter wasn't here that night. So, of course, I tell her the next day what happened. And I said, then there was this weird song, and I remembered who it was by. I can't now, but it was, and she was like, what's the name of that song, that last song you said? And I told her, and she said, oh my God, that's a song that was, remember I bought Dad an album? I think she bought her dad an album with that on it. And she said, yeah, that was we always loved together. She said, didn't you know that? And I said, no, because you guys kind of had your own thing going there. So it's like, that was weird. I was like, don't do that, because it's like a board. Isn't it like a board? And when you think it's like a board, Roger, where you're doing, you're summoning stuff in.
Well, I mean, with me, like, I go, when it comes to stuff like the Ouija board, I just go off of what people recommend. I mean, I personally didn't have an experience where an evil Ouija board freaking sent out evil spirits to hurt me. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I've heard people say, look, don't do that. And I'm one of those guys that freaking, who, when somebody says, look, don't do that, I don't do that. You know what I mean? So,
and I think, I've heard people say, oh, not to play with Alexa either, because it's something like a board where she can come back and say things and do things. So, and she does do some weird things sometimes.
I mean, for me, a lot of people have warned not to use Ouija boards, and everybody, when they think Ouija boards, they think freaking like, Poltergeist or some crazy movie from Hollywood, but like, this is little stuff that these things can affect, like, driving home and all of a sudden your steering freaking goes out on you and you freaking have to pull over to the side of the road without your steering. You know how hard that is? It can be done, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. Things like that can happen to you and you'd never even know it. You'd think it was just a car problem.
Right. Well, I think, with also, we're all drinking, because it's Christmas Eve, you're all drinking, you're all we thought it was silly, so we didn't think anything was going to happen. And then when it happened, we were all like, oh my God, what just happened here? And everybody was scared. And it was like, and then we found out more to it. We found out from my daughter that there was even another song, and it's like there was one song for everybody or something there that had gone away. Yeah.
Speaking of that, me and my wife are going to try to watch Witchboard tonight. She found that on Tubi because I was telling her about it.
Yeah.
I watched it. Yeah, I watched it alone. It was kind of scary, though.
No.
It's fun to watch that.
Like your mom said, it's an 80s movie, so don't. There's going to be cheese, okay? There is going to be cheese, but for a 10-year-old kid, if you don't want a 10-year-old kid to mess with a Ouija board, you let them sit and watch that. They'll never touch it.
My wife swears she remembers it from somewhere. I was like, well, you may have seen it way back then. It's just been so long you've forgotten, because those movies stuff I watched when I was a kid. But
the first one,
they would be familiar now, but
no, it's the first one, right?
Just Witchboard.
Okay, good. Don't waste your time on the second one or the third one.
Oh, is there a second one? Oh my goodness. Second one. The second ones usually aren't good.
Yeah. See,
so yeah,
they're not good. Well, it's all on how you define it. I mean, you can watch it if you want, but you'll like the first one better by not watching those. Because, like I said, there is cheese in it, and people dress like the 1980s because it's the 1980s. Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
just as good of a laugh at it as I will a scare, you know.
Yeah. I just wanted to let you know. I don't want anybody to like misinterpret what I was saying there.
No.
Like it was like oh don't watch that movie. That's not what I was saying. I was like as a
Add
teen,
some 80s cheese in it.
yeah. And I was like 10 years old, maybe 12 years old, somewhere in that age limit when I watched it. So yeah, it was scary to me. You know what I mean?
It wasn't that. Oh, it was kind of scary for me too.
Well, that's good.
Even though it's easy.
It is
Yeah.
cheesy, yeah, it is. But it does have scare. It does have scare in it.
Yeah. So that's what they say about the boards anyway. And Alexa too, I think. So,
Now
yeah.
That Alexa thing, man, later on, if you guys really want to talk about that more, we could do it because there's a lot more when it comes to Alexa than just what you guys are talking about. Like, there's insane sci-fi material concerning those kind of technologies. Okay, like
Yeah.
you get on Facebook every day and you post stuff. Okay. Now, what happens when you pass away? And all that information on Facebook is there. And your family, like Austin said, show us some music, which I don't know if he was on Facebook or not, or anything like that.
No, he wasn't.
But
No.
But like, what
And
about you? I mean, they could easily
Like,
just
yeah.
pull up your whole profile because of the stuff you post on Facebook.
Well, I know Alexa can go into some of your music you've ordered from Amazon, but he wasn't around. I mean, Alexa wasn't around before he died, so it's
Right.
kind of weird. Yeah. So,
I mean, but like that's actually a good topic. I mean,
Oh
Right.
yeah, that's a show over in and of itself.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So you guys want to call
Okay,
it
well-
quits?
Right, I guess it has been. Yeah, let's do that. And
Man,
it's been interesting.
you keep coming up with these good topics, Summer. I don't know.
Well, I forget. See, that's why I have Austin sit in sometimes because he'll remind me because I don't know why I forgot that. I was going to tell you about that Michael McDonald song because when I was going to do an interview with John, I was going to talk about it. And I think I might have told John, but then I never got around to that, and so I was going to mention it tonight. That was another thing, and I'm glad Austin did
Good.
mention that because
I'm glad I
Ricky.
got to hear it first. He always gets to hear
Yeah.
the good stuff first, so now I got to hear it. Na, 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 boo, boo. You know what I mean? He'll send me
don't know.
messages, and he'll say, "Man, you won't guess what I just heard," and stuff. And he'd start telling me, or you won't guess who's I'm getting an interview with, and I'm like, who? And then I'm like, man, I've been wanting to interview that person for like 2 years now.
right.
Like now
I feel bad for. No, I mean I hope everything works out for him. And
yeah. He
so
said he'll be back at it. It's just right now with his son and everything. So
yeah.
We check on him from time to time, see how he's doing and stuff. So
yeah,
Right. Well, Ned, I guess we'll reconvene next. You're doing your show right on the Fifth Dimension. I'll have to listen to that one because
I'd love to
I'm not
hear
real-
that too. I'll show up for
It's a
that
little-
one, or at least listen
Right.
in. If you guys
yeah.
will allow me to freaking listen in.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's been real, and thank you for everyone that's been listening, and Roger for all your input and everything. So have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.